Greetings, everyone. I am honored and excited today to be in conversation with Rita George. And let me just introduce you, Rita, and then we'll get into our conversation. But Rita is a leadership coach, consultant, speaker, advocate, and author in the field of strategic transformation. She guides us in how to heal, awaken, and move into new paradigms that are about living in harmony, love, and wisdom individually and collectively. And Rita, I don't remember exactly when we first connected, but we started talking about your ISIS blueprint for how we can heal, awaken, be in this transformational process. And that will be our focus of conversation today. But the work that you've done in your own life, the work that you've done in supporting others is truly profound. And I have deep respect for how you have walked your talk, how you embody that. But let's start with talking some about your own personal journey and how you came to develop this blueprint.
Well, thank you, Heather, because we both are very practical and believe that we need to experience spirituality, not just talk about it, and experience the heart intelligence. But I didn't start there. I grew up in a multicultural family. All four of my grandparents immigrated from the mountains of Lebanon, where they had been isolated for centuries. And they came from the ancient Phoenician philosophy. And our ancestry goes back to 400 AD when they converted to become Maronite Christians. So that's how far back our family tree goes, with lore, stories. So growing up in this multicultural environment from the Middle East, we were very family oriented. It was fun, language, food, everything. But at the same time, we were very integrated into the culture. But the one important thing about our family was their faith. And so they were Catholic when they converted here, into America, because there's no Maronite Christian churches. And growing up, I became highly traumatized in the religious, what I consider dogma of the church. And what their belief was that God was outside yourself, Jesus was into, we were sinning all the time, was very judgmental. You were never going to be saved unless you were a Catholic. So because of all this trauma, I was basically suicidal as a kid because I knew that wasn't the truth. I was carrying some deep inner wisdom, and if I expressed it, I was judged and criticized. So by the time I was a teenager, obviously in Catholic schools, I figured if I was educated, because no one had been in college in my family, whoa, I could save my soul. And I decided to be a US senator and an entrepreneur. So I headed off to business school. And after graduating, I'm in Chicago selling computer software systems. And my sales manager says to me after 6 months, Rita, you need to live in San Francisco. And that was the first time I had really understood guidance. Someone was guiding me forward, and I felt it. And even though in the beginning I resisted it, I moved, left this phenomenal position, didn't have a position in San Francisco, came across the Bay Bridge and said, I'm home. It was the strangest sensation. And let me explain that at that point, I wasn't going to get another job selling computer software systems. So I worked as a legal secretary, and I began exploring and developing a deep inner connection with Mother Nature. Hiking, backpacking, sailing, scuba diving, jumping out of airplanes. I followed my adventuresome soul, being a curious person. And then, overnight, another door opened. And a friend said, instead of going to this art gallery, we're going to go to this political meeting. And it was the formation of the National Women's Political Caucus. And I end up being the treasurer at the end of the evening because I'm the only business person in the room. Within 6 months, I'm the president. And that began a 10-year career of being the chief spokesperson for initiatives, creating fundraising events that raise major funding for the human potential movement, human rights movement, women's rights movement, gay movement, whatever movement was unfolding in San Francisco. And working in campaigns until finally I was a political candidate for office. And thank goodness I lost. By the way, Harvey Milk won. He was the first gay person, known gay person, to be elected to office. But I knew if I continued on in politics as a candidate to the US Senate, I would lose my integrity. Because I felt in conflict with how you had to finance political campaigns. It was about money to be elected. So then I was an appointee of the mayor, and I was communication director for a campaign, and I knew I had topped out. This was coming to the end of my political career. And then another door opened, outer guidance. A colleague said, I'd like to have you do a training program with me on marketing. So I designed it, offered it, and now my business was the beginning of my business as a marketing strategist. Heather, I kept on literally pushing the edge, struggling on the edge, clinging to the edge to get ahead. Mm. The elusive more, being on the faculty of universities, writing a column for a newspaper, speaking across the country. Oh my God, I was wearing myself thin, still involved in all the sporting events, the cultural events, a full social life. What was I thinking?
But that was seen as the epitome of success.
Absolutely. I'm highly successful. I'm in all these leadership positions and I'm making a difference. That's very important to me. I am helping thousands and thousands of people. So why would you want to let that go? And then tragedy struck. My best male friend died. A week later, I ended up in Egypt, traveling alone, a vacation we had planned together. And after exploring the pyramids alone with my guide, I ended up in Alexandria, Egypt. And I'm walking across the King Pharaoh's palace. There's a bridge, and I'm in the middle of the bridge. And all of a sudden, my inner voice, auditory, spoke to me. And it said, you are to transform your life. You need to do this, write a book, do this, change the business. It was like, wait a minute. I hadn't planned on any of this, and I really don't want to do any of that. I'm successful. You're asking me to give all that up? Oh, Heather. And then I fell into the deep inner crisis I was in. My life was empty. I was on a treadmill. There was a spiritual crisis of meaning unfolding. How much more empty could I become? It was like, I'm dying, just like my friend Richard. And in that moment, holding onto that rail, and I'm in the middle of this bridge, and I'm looking back and I'm looking forward. And I know it's a metaphor. What are you going to do, Rita? Ooh, so I took a deep breath. I said, I'm terrified of moving into the unknown and the uncertainty, but I will face my fear. And every day I'm going to make a commitment to heal my body, mind, heart, and spirit. And I walked across the bridge, put my feet in the sand at the Mediterranean Sea. 3 weeks later, I returned to San Francisco. I'm in a unitive state of consciousness. I didn't even understand what had happened. I would later learn this mystical experience led me to be at one with everything. And I wasn't scared. I was excited. I feel like I was a puppet lifted out of this former life of fear and anxiety and doubt. and, pushing and struggling. And then everything started feeling different internally, and I integrated. I understood what integration meant. And here's the first message from the ancient wisdom traditions. You have to be willing to let go of whatever is not working in your life in order to allow space for what will work. And I always knew that there were ancient teachings, and I was intrigued with them from Egypt, and I was intrigued with Goddess Isis. She was like the goddess of transformation, death, rebirth. And in that moment, I said, I'm beginning to access the ancient wisdom. How cool is that? And then everything fell apart. I had to move my home, my office, completed work with all my clients, and there I was in the void. And I'm excited and joyful. And everybody in my life is concerned about me. That's how it began.
It's so interesting, Rita, because you had this experience in 1983, and I had a
Yes.
very similar mystical experience in 1993. But for both of us, it was a death of the life that we'd been living and an identity that we had known to be in the liminal time, to be in the mystery, to move into a whole new way of being. And how, in this process, did the ISIS blueprint come to you?
Well, here we were. This happened on the equinox, the fall equinox of 83. That's how long ago it was. And what happened then is, as everything fell apart, then one person after another from my past entered my life and opened up a door for me to leave San Francisco and move to Mount Tamalpais in Mill Valley. Then someone republished an article of mine in the Examiner, and it opened up the door for new clients. And then I was back in a new office. All of a sudden, out of the blue, without me taking action, but I did, inner-level action, which we can talk about the blueprint, everything came together. And I thought, what a magical life I'm leading. Wow, this is going to be the rest of my life. Oh boy, I was delusional. Seriously delusional. I had a wonderful time though for about 3 years, and new friends, knew this, knew that, new adventures. And then in 1986, January, I'll never forget it. My inner voice says, you are to let go of your business. I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm resisting again. No, 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 no. And my inner voice says, remember your commitment on the bridge in Alexandria, Egypt? Whew, Heather, I took a deep breath. I said, oh my gosh, I have to go into the unknown again and let go of everything, not supporting myself financially, not knowing anything. I let go. 2 months later, a doctor, acupuncturist from Asia, informed me I had chronic fatigue syndrome and that he didn't know how I was going to heal myself, because you have to have energy to heal, and I had burned myself out. And I knew something was wrong, because it was the first time in my life I actually stopped to listen to my body. And few of us are listening to our bodies even today. And then it started a 5-year process of unraveling the ISIS blueprint. And what I discovered is that all the misuse and abuse of power that I had accumulated, all the ways I gave away power, allowed someone to steal my power, were within me. And that's what I was accessing, is this ancient blueprint, principle by principle. But I didn't understand at the time it was sequential. But in a state of awareness, I would access it. And because I was a strategist, I would apply it in a practical way to see how it worked. And it was working. One step forward, one step backward sometime, but I discovered that once we started healing our emotional side and our mental side, that our physical felt better. I started healing the chronic fatigue syndrome gradually, another whole story. And then in 1987, I'm in the midst of this. I'm in an improv class. And in the middle of a character thing we were doing around trust, I was electrocuted. And as that synergy was surging through my body, I stopped. And for the first time, my mind, which had been literally a pinball machine, stopped. I returned home. For 2 weeks, I was in the void, in a trance state, integrated it. And the next message was, now you have to teach what it is you know. And I'm like, but what do I know? I've had these incredible experiences. So I'm like, okay. So I sit down in my nest and I ask the question, what do I know? Start pouring out of me. I just developed a program out of the blue. All these entrepreneurs call me. I'm not even working. And they say, we hear you have a new program. I offer it. They get these enormous results. So by the time this is occurring, I was healing more and more. And finally, I got to a point where the doctor said to heal further, you have to move to a warmer climate. So I went up to Sonoma in the wine country and lived on a vineyard. And while I was there and I had one client, they said, we'd like to have more information about this blueprint. So I sat down and said, now I have to write a huge workbook. And I transcribed all my journals. And in a Mozart moment of enlightenment, I saw that everyone is following a sequential path of a process of transformation to heal themselves. And the ISIS blueprint was born.
Mm.
And it was all about our relationship to power in two different paradigms. That's how it happened.
And talk a little bit about that, Rita, because some of what is so profound about this model, and we'll get into the details of it in a minute. But as you and I were talking about before we got on the recording, it's really moving out of that understanding of power from a patriarchal perspective, power over abuse, misuse of power, to really understanding the meaning of inner power and transformation such that we come back in out of ego, out of power over, into the wisdom of the ancient cultures and the wisdom of the sacred feminine, back into right relationship with ourselves and harmony with all that is. So it's such a radical shift out of these paradigms that we've all been enculturated to believe are the path to success into this path that is about healing and transformation and true empowerment.
Yeah. And Heather, I remember your story about Seth and Isis and Osiris. And you tell it better than I do, I think.
Well, let's talk about that because
Because it's really, yeah.
the ISIS blueprint is bringing that ancient wisdom into form in ways that we can access it today. But
Yes.
as I've talked about in previous videos, and as you and I have talked about, this is such a profound story, archetypal story about what it means to live either in a path of spiritual consciousness or a path of being caught in ego. So the story is about Isis and Osiris, who are these benevolent, of the heart, spiritually conscious leaders of the people who support the people of the ancient Egyptian culture to live in harmony and balance, and that principle that they understood of ma'at, everything is interconnected, and you're meant to be in right relationship with all that is. But Set, the brother of Osiris, was caught in ego, in a longing for power. His name is associated in ancient Egypt with an understanding of chaos, disorder. So he creates this box that's perfectly aligned to the dimensions of Osiris, to trap him in this box, to then uh, put him in the Nile River where he's carried off to his death. And Set is striving for power and control. But Isis, the great goddess, the great healer, who understands that transformational process of life, death, rebirth, searches for Osiris, finds him, brings his body back, revives him, restores him, then unites with him to be impregnated with their son Horus. But of course, Set is still on his path of ego, power, control. So he finds Osiris again and now kills him, cuts him into pieces, scatters the pieces everywhere. And again, Isis gathers the pieces of her beloved, heals him, restores him, and supports him in transitioning in at his request to the other realms.
Mhm.
But it's really such a profound tale about our journey as humanity between honoring a path of spiritual consciousness and living in right harmony, living in that alignment with our soul selves, and then how we get caught in that energy of Set, of chaos, disorder, ego, longing for power and control, and the way it leads to increasing destruction. And that is so what we're seeing playing out in the world right
Today.
now.
Absolutely, Heather. It's brilliant how you describe this. And when I heard the story, I went, this is the ISIS blueprint. Even though you know the story, when you hear someone describe it at the depth that you did, my heart, I said, it's being played out again. But her blueprint is the way forward for all of us. But I think when we understand the two sides of it, the ego fear, and then the spiritual component of it, and the conflict we have around power, that's what we need to understand, the big picture and then the details. And so when you look at Seth, Seth is attempting to control, conquer, and compete. And we see that being played out in our individual lives, our community lives, the political environment, world affairs, and it's getting bigger and bigger. But the optimism is, so are people awakening and becoming more conscious to the other side, the ISIS side of how we can co-create with people and connect and collaborate with people. Because I have to say, if I ask anyone, what would you like? Everyone wants well-being. Everyone wants to feel safe. Most people would love to have harmony and ease in their life. Not possible with Seth.
Yeah,
Not possible with that ego fear energy,
yeah.
right? So that's what I start teaching clients. Here it is, but they start applying it to every area of their life. Something's out of balance because you had a wake-up call. What is my relationship to power? Am I looking in the outer world or my inner world?
Mm.
Am I an overachiever? Everything's about the outer world. Am I giving my agency and decision-making power away to doctors, to my husband, to my wife, to my boss, to food, to my stockbroker? Those are all the ways people were giving their power away. And that's why they were in crisis, because they allowed someone else to control their life.
Well, and we're in such a time of transition and transformation on the planet right now. And it so many people are awakening and are realizing we're moving into this Aquarian age. We're moving into this period of opportunity to make an evolutionary leap into higher consciousness. And the and I want to pull it up in a minute, but the ISIS blueprint really shows us the steps we can take to
It
do
does.
that. But we're seeing the shadow aspects of humanity, the effort to cling to the paradigms of the past that are really at work in the world right now, too. So it's a choice point.
It is. Do you
And
want to, like you say, do you want to resist it? Or do you want to move to the other side and embrace your true authentic self?
yeah. Well, let me pull it up and
Okay.
let's look at some of the aspects of it because it's really profound. So this in the top is showing just the really principles of these two paradigms. Is that so? This
Yes.
would be the current on the left here is the current power over paradigm. This would be
Yes.
the ISIS blueprint.
Yes.
So guide us through, and you've talked about, and there, this is half of it, and then I'll pull up the other half of it. But you've
Okay.
talked about how we're having to then do that inner work to heal and move from this out of balanced paradigm into this more spiritually conscious paradigm of the Isis path.
Right. So here we are, and these are what I call the four foundation principles. So, as I said, it's about our relationship to power. And if we look at this, what are the various ways we abuse and misuse power? And we end up feeling helpless when we do, because we're not on the map of consciousness. So we're giving our power away. We'll talk about it when we get to the next principle. And we allow other people to steal our power by controlling our life, controlling our decisions, allowing them to program us and condition us into belief systems that are against our nature.
And you know the interesting thing, Rita, as a clinical psychologist, those people, I know that those who are in positions of abusing power are often operating out of an underlying sense of insecurity or emptiness, such that they need, like Set, they need power and control to feel secure, to
Whole.
feel whole.
That's how they feel whole. So more is never going to be enough. It's the elusive more. So you're traumatizing people. And if we're personally abusing power, we're at war with ourselves. You're at war with your own heart intelligence, your own divine sacred self, your own spiritual nature, your own inner guidance. By that, I mean you're now ignoring wake-up calls and guidance and more entrenched into misusing power and allowing other people to abuse power. Does all that make sense?
So talk about how the power in the ISIS blueprint is a different form of power.
Well, when we get to it, when you get to the, understanding the power, all power is within you instead of externally. So we're connecting with our spiritual life force, with our creative life force internally. And that's where our creativity actually comes from. If we're on the other side, we're being destructive. If we're on this side, we're being for something. The other side is against something. You can imagine if you have a vision, you're moving forward in increasing consciousness and expanding awareness versus attempting to destroy something or traumatize people with the abuse of power.
Mm. So again, it's ego versus aligning with the heart, with the
With the
soul
heart
self.
again. But power and responsibility go together. So here we are. You relinquish responsibility. You complain about life. You rehash old grievances. Never get to forgiveness. You make excuses for yourself and other people. You justify every decision from the past rather than doing something to change and transform the situation. Or you really talk all the time, but you never take action. Or you just deny what's going on. Or you blame, you're a victim. That's what we see playing out when you misuse power. Or someone blames you. Okay?
Yeah.
So there we are. We're relinquishing accountability, and now we feel powerless. Let's go to the other side. And we actually accept responsibility that we are not victims. We are creating our own reality. But we need to create it from a level of consciousness that is connected to really our heart intelligence and not our ego mind. And that's about owning integrity, being true to yourself, discovering your true, authentic self, and then honoring that integrity. Every decision comes from that place of integrity and deep respect for yourself and other people. So power and responsibility go together. And if we're not seeing it expressed through someone, they're on the other side. They're unconscious, unaware, asleep.
Mm. And you've talked about how this blueprint is sequential. So, as you do your inner work to really be in alignment with your heart and your inner power, that leads to taking responsibility.
Yes.
And the same is true of the other side, that all of these things end up then um, playing into each other to keep us in one paradigm or the other.
Or the other. And when we see the whole blueprint, you'll see it. So you can imagine now have inner power, you have responsibility. Now the niche issue is trust. So if you're misusing power and abusing it, you don't trust yourself or anyone.
Yeah.
Your life is so out of control. And you've got that restless energy because that ego always needs more power, more this, more that, the elusive more damage, more destruction. That's really what's going on because you don't believe you have the wisdom inside or the ability to solve any issue or challenge in your life. You're always looking outside. Someone else has to take responsibility because power is outside you. So now we have to come internally and say, I have an inner voice. There is inner guidance. It's my heart intelligence. It's not my ego mind. I need to start connecting with it on a deep level. And I have to really say to myself, I do have wisdom. These are universally qualities within me. It's within everyone. I just been conditioned to believe it's not within me. So now I start accessing my intuition and the deep wisdom and the well and the guidance. And now that I have faith in myself and trust in myself, I extend it to others. I'm not into controlling them anymore. I want them to feel this deep trust within themselves and the power within their heart. Does that make sense?
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And then we get to what we call the fourth foundation principle, commitment. So we're on the ego side. Everything feels hopeless. Now we're feeling helpless, powerless, restless, and hopeless. And fear is running our life. We don't have the strength to deal with anything. I've got to turn over my power to someone else.
Or keep fighting to keep in power.
Or I'm fighting to keep it and I abuse someone else and make sure they feel hopeless, restless, powerless, and helpless. So I have to traumatize them. So they lose their connection with their own inner spirit. Make sense?
Yeah.
We see that played out on a world level today. Now over to commitment. So commitment is about knowing the sequential path that I have the power, I'm accepting responsibility, I trust my inner guidance, and now I'm going to commit to overcome any fear I have, any sense of overwhelm, any sense of helplessness, powerless, hopelessness. And as I do that, I come into deeper levels of resiliency and inner strength, and eventually I reach the quality of courage. Now I have the courage to handle anything in my life. And it's on an inner level. No one can take this away from me.
Mm.
No one, unless I allow them. It's my choice. I'm not a victim.
And I love that the root of courage is heart. It's about
Heart.
coming from the heart. And I love in my own experience that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the willingness to feel afraid, but to act anyway, to come from that deeper commitment. And again, this whole paradigm on this side is about coming from alignment with your soul self to
Self.
know that even though your ego may be terrified, you're on the path that's in alignment with your true self.
So brilliant, so brilliant, Heather.
So let's go to this next level here.
Okay, here we go. Okay, so now we're on a bridge. It's a metaphor, but it's real life too. And the bridge is, if you look at the two sides, one is about focused attention, and the other is about rejecting that our intent, our focus, or anything in our life is creating our reality. We don't want to be present, obviously, because we feel hopeless, helpless, whatever, right? So we're caught up in the FUDs, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. We're allowing negative beliefs, negative perceptions, self-limited thinking to run our life. And we're being conditioned with this negative thinking from the outer world if we allow the outer world's perception to be our inner world. Now we're so distracted, so out of the moment, we're on overwhelm. That's where
And I think this
distraction,
is also, Rita, how we get overstimulated by news, by social media, which keeps us distracted and keeps us from going within.
brilliant. Absolutely right, Heather. So that's why people are distracted, because we're not in our power, our inner power. And it's easy for us to become distracted and feel overwhelmed or feel anxious. So let's go over to the other side. And we now know that we need to discipline ourselves. No one can do this for us. We are going to have to activate within us. Remember, all these principles and qualities are within us. So I'm going to activate my ability to focus and have a clear intent and clarity on what I am going to create in my life and what I'm going to allow into my life or not. And that comes through mental and emotional discipline. I'm going to be aware in the moment I'm reacting to fear in some form. And I'm going to come back into the present moment like I did when I was accessing this and be aware that that is what I'm doing. I'm allowing myself to not be focused. That's okay. I'm going to accept it. And then these are what I call the aware skills, that I'm aware of it. I'm witnessing myself doing this. Now I'm going to allow it without just say I'm doing this and just let it be and come back into focusing that
Rita,
I am not that negativity.
this is so profound, Rita, in that so much of the healing journey involves getting out of the way in which so much of our lives are operating from our unconscious patterns, thoughts, beliefs, emotions, to moving into the witness self so that we're then seeing these patterns we get caught in and able to make conscious choices.
Choices. You're so right, Heather. And this is basically when I was in the process, when I discovered what I consider the aware skills. I was in a conversation on the phone. It was the most painful conversation interaction I've ever had in my life. I thought I was going to die in the moment from the pain. And then in a moment of inspiration, I said, I'm going to accept what you're saying to the person on the other side of, the phone. And I got off the line and I sat still and I said, what just happened? And all of a sudden it became clear. The aware skills. That's when I named it the aware. I'm aware, I'm witnessing. Oh, I finally accepted what the other person was attempting to communicate. And I appreciated that they had that viewpoint. It just wasn't my viewpoint. And when I could accept and allow and appreciate, I released, I let go. It was the death rebirth process. And then I felt this huge, energetic sense of joy and peace because I wasn't resisting. And it happened when I was working on this principle of focused attention.
So
And
part of what
just,
you're saying too, Rita, is it's really taking responsibility for your own journey and your own process, but not being controlled by someone else's choices, their
right,
journey, their process.
that's exactly right. So I realized in the moment, but it was magical how it unfolded. It was like inner guidance, Isa speaking to me. Let go. Allow them to be, and you be.
Yeah.
So that is the bridge. And you need the bridge, and you need to have that ability to focus and have discipline to move to what I call the healing of the heart, the mind, and the spirit. And it's in that order. So years ago, when I was teaching this, people said, no, you have to heal your mind before you can get to your heart. Like, no, I think your heart comes first.
Which we now know more and more fully from Heart Math
From
Institute
heart
and
math,
other.
but there
Yep.
wasn't any heart math in. So I'm like, whoa, well, let me explain the logic. If you're deeply wounded and you're in trauma and you have all this pain and you're suffering and sadness and grief and this and that, tell me, how are you going to deal? How are you going to deal with? How's your mind going to deal with this? This isn't a mind issue.
Well, and your mind then forms beliefs based
Yes,
on that trauma.
yes. And by the way, someone did all that trauma to me. You don't believe that maybe your thinking may be causing some of the trauma, or maybe your belief systems. And why are we traumatized here? Because on the resistance side, we are judgmental, we are
Mm.
critical, and we're comparing ourselves to others all the
Mm.
time. And I was a master at being critical of myself because I was criticized so much as a child and an adult many times. And so I'm always comparing myself to other people. I'm not good enough. I'm not this enough. I need to do better. I need to be smarter. I need to be something other than what I am. That's the
Mm.
comparison.
Yep.
Wow, I'm wearing myself out just thinking about it now. So, all that judgment and critical, we now have to discipline ourselves to move to the other side. Whew, and say, I have to release all that anger, that despair, the disappointment, the pain, the grief, all of it that's causing me to be critical. That's the healing of the heart.
Mm.
So, there's a sequential process. First, I have to understand that I'm wounded. Then I have to accept I'm wounded or I'm suffering. And then I have to appreciate it. And I mean, seriously appreciate that all of this pain has surfaced and I'm now aware that I'm suffering.
Mm.
And in that appreciation, woo, I can reach forgiveness of myself and anyone else. And that leads me to the spiritual quality of compassion,
Mm.
understanding, acceptance, appreciation, forgiveness, compassion, the healing of the heart.
And it's when we can do that inner work and inner healing, come to self-love, then we really know how to be loving to another.
Yes. Because think about it, I'm not looking outside for someone to take responsibility. I'm not looking for them for answers. I'm not looking for them for strength and everything. I'm not looking for acceptance and approval from others. It has nothing to do with who I am. It's about the love within me. And
Mm.
I'm realizing that now. Oh, I've been looking to the external world for all this, but it's been in me the whole time.
Which leads to if you don't do that inner healing work, then you are attached to the outcome. And your
Totally.
self-worth is totally reliant on
Ah,
what you're accomplishing or proving or how you're meeting those standards of external success.
gee, you can do my whole thing, Heather. You've got it. That's exactly what it is. It's your attachment to money and possessions and wealth and status and position power and achievements and performance and the assumptions you make and the expectations you have and the outcome. And you feel, and the reason why we're doing that is we feel unworthy.
Yeah.
Our self-worth and our self-value is attached to something externally. It's our ego and it's fate. And again, it's the elusive more. Because of this, we're holding on tight. Remember, death, rebirth. We need to come to the other side. Ooh, and say, I need to heal. Self-worth, value is within me. My esteem is within me. I need to let go of all these attachments. I can have money, I can have achievements. I'm not going to give that up. It's my attachment to it, my identity. As you said, your ego identity to it, the fear. What will happen to me if I let go? Ah, and where is this leading us? To humility. The humility of knowing that we're being guided through this phenomenal process of transformation to move, to reclaim our true authentic self and honor the heart intelligence within.
Beautiful.
Which means we now have to come to the healing of the spirit. So the heart gets healed, the mind starts healing. Now, instead of flowing against life, ignoring the light that is within us, and feeling like we are really swimming upstream, and we have this intense stress in our life and tension in our life. Oh, tiring, isn't it? And we move to alignment. Because once our three parts of our conscious, subconscious, and superconscious minds are aligned, body, mind, heart, and spirit, the medicine wheel, as you talk about, is aligned, we're now flowing with life. Because now we're in peace, harmony, and ease within ourselves. And now we're anti-aging. We're regenerating.
Yeah.
We've left the resistant conflict cycle behind, and we're into harmony and unity.
And this is really when you come to the center of the medicine wheel and you realize this is just an incarnational journey and you've become fully aligned with your soul self.
Yes,
And
Heather.
find that inner peace.
Yeah, so now you're in the center, and now you understand you're at the top of the mountain. You turn around 360 degrees and you go, oh my God, I didn't see that picture before.
Yeah.
I have a full view. Everything is interconnected.
Yeah.
Earth, sky, light, everything is, I'm connected to everybody in the universe. And everything is conscious and alive. But the other side is, once we're over here on the other side, that's where projection comes from. Everything is separate. Conflict is normal. It is natural. War is normal. So all the trauma that I've accumulated through allowing others to abuse and misuse my power in all the ways I've given away power, I'm now going to project it all onto someone else. And if I'm in a high-level leadership position, you can imagine the damage being done. And we're seeing it played out today. The projection. So we come to the other side, and that's when we are finally seeing the interconnections and we reach unconditional love of ourselves. And we then look at how do I extend that love and light to other people and help them awaken to who they are, to the universal wisdom that's within all of us, which is the ISIS blueprint. And there are other blueprints, I'm sure, that carry the similar universal wisdom from ancient traditions.
This is so profound, Rita. And it is the ancient wisdom. This is the story of Isis and Osiris. But this is in our psyches, it's in our soul selves awareness that this is the path of love and truth and wisdom and spiritual consciousness. And this is what we're being called back into now. And it is such a critical choice point for humanity because we are either going to continue these paradigms of the past and keep the cycle of trauma and destruction going. Or, and I love this model, guides us in how to heal, to be in this process of awakening and transformation, to move into whole new paradigms of how we're living our lives that then emanate out to support others in healing
and
and
healing.
transforming.
And Heather, what's brilliant about it is if I'm out of balance, I just go to the blueprint. I'm feeling helpless. Ah, this is what I'm doing. I'm feeling restless. Ah, I'm being critical. Oh, but you have to work up to the first principle to start the healing. It's like, okay, at least I know it's a beginning point of transformation. And all my clients learn, be aware in the moment. No criticism. Just say this, I am so appreciative that I'm now aware that this really, I'm aware.
Because as we were saying, having that witness self is so critical in, and in the arch medicine wheel where I work that path of healing, you enter the medicine wheel coming into that witness self so that you can begin to see these patterns. But as you said, not to be critical of ourselves, but to hold ourselves with compassion to be able to see what we need to heal and change and transform to come into our true selves.
Yes. So, if I look back and how did I get chronic fatigue? How did I have any imbalance? Because I was misusing power. I was being critical. I was complaining. I was blaming. I was doing whatever. I was a product of that other cycle, that other worldview of control, compete, conquer. That's what success is. No wonder my body broke down.
But also, Rita, wouldn't you say that when we're living in that paradigm of the illusion of separation and of needing to compete to succeed, that we're also constantly at war with our true selves and with our soul self?
Yeah.
So it creates this inner tension and inner conflict that is exhausting.
It's exhausting. That's how you get there. You go back to the principle of alignment, the tension, the stress, the criticalness, the distraction, all of it adds up. And when you've been doing this for 30 years or whatever, hey, you're lucky at a young age if your body breaks down because you can heal. But what's happening to many people, it's breaking down in their 60s, 70s, 80s. You don't have as much energy. You can heal because the body is a self-healing mechanism. You can heal anything because I've healed 2 chronic autoimmune diseases. But you have to have the energy. You have to have the inner resources activated, restored to do it. I was just graced that I was accessing this ancient wisdom, and it was the ancient wisdom that was leading me through the process of healing. But obviously, I was connected to the Middle East through my ancient ancestors. And at the time, I didn't understand the true connection because Egypt and Lebanon are both considered the Middle East. Although Egypt's in Africa and Lebanon's in Asia, but they're connected.
But it really is so profound that you've lived this journey of healing and transformation, and you've been guided to have this template to support us in being on that path of our own individual healing and transformation. And I want to come back to a second conversation with you and talk about your Phoenician blueprint coming out of the ancient wisdom of your cultural background that can be about how do we now apply this collectively.
Apply it.
So we'll return to that.
We'll return. Thank you.
But part of what I think is so important is we can't get to that collective transformation if we don't do our own inner work.
And that's the importance of this. And we're, like you said, at a choice point. Everyone has a choice. You can get on this train or that train. My concern is if you decide not to get on, ISIS's train, or rocket ship or whatever, what's going to happen to you?
Yeah.
Because we're imploding if we're not on it, because you can only handle so much of that negative energy building internally, collectively and internally, in our families, in our community, whatever.
Well, and I think you made a really good point, Rita, that when we're in that inner conflict, it can lead to illness, which I think is the body's wisdom in trying to wake us up. I know my own issue with my own autoimmune was a real wake-up call to look
Wake
at
up
when
call.
I was out of balance, and it guides us to what is at the root of this to be able to heal and transform. But it also, and this is what we're seeing in the world right now, it leads to this cycle of trauma being repeated
Read it
generation after
over
generation,
and over again.
generation.
Oh, so right, Heather. But it's the death rebirth process. That's the marvel of Isis. It was all about transformation. And my theater professor, when I was taking the history of theater, I'd informed you of this before. He said the oldest play in the world, and Isis is a morality play, was Isis and Osiris and Seth. It ran for 2,500 years as a soap opera. They would do the whole thing and then start all over. Think about this is before Greece, Roman theater. It was the philosophy, it was the consciousness, it was how you maintain the balance and harmony within yourself and in the culture. Everyone was aware of this.
Well, and as you and I have talked about, we go through this cycle of evolution as humanity. And I really believe it's related to our solar system and our sun being a part of
Yes.
the binary star system. And I believe that binary star is the star Sirius, associated with Isis, and that Osiris is associated with Orion, that
Mm-hmm.
literally moves in its declination in the sky as we go through this processional cycle of ascending and descending consciousness. So, this morality tale is coming from mythology, but it's written in the sky. And it's really showing us these energies of the cosmos and the earth that are guiding us to see what we need to see, to wake up, to heal, to come back into balance, into harmony, and to know that then we can live in that alignment and not have to keep going through these cycles.
So isn't that exciting? It's really magical. Really, it is. This is the most exciting time ever to be living in history because we all have a choice. We can transform and we can do it with far more ease and harmony. We didn't have an understanding of all this insight and wisdom even 30 years ago. Think about how fortunate we are. Really, totally grateful.
Well, before we end, Rita, I want to say I am so grateful that you have really lived this journey. You have let this ancient wisdom come through you to be in this blueprint in a way that's practical, that helps us look at the steps that we can take to be in that journey of healing and transformation. And I want to close with a quote from your website
Okay.
because I think this
We'll
is
see which one you chose.
really profound. The quote is, Rita has found that the dark and the light, the suffering and self emergence are all part of one great transformational journey of divine intelligence that guides us into our greater evolution. This awakening to our divine self allows us to live in harmony and to heal the world.
Right.
Thank you, Rita.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing this with us today. And I'm excited to be in our second conversation about how we can apply this collectively to support the healing of our world.
Thank you, Heather, because we're aligned. We both have this ancient connection with Egypt.
Yeah. Well, and this ancient wisdom that's coming through to us to guide us in this time to come back
Yes.
into our true selves, come back into harmony.
So I want everybody to know we all have this light and love within us. We do. We just have to know that we also have the capacity to cultivate it. And we have a choice every moment to say, I am accessing this ancient wisdom. It is me. I'm going to embody it, embrace it, experience it, and express it at my highest level of consciousness. And I put out a clarion call to people that years ago I had another mystical experience when I was in Peru after visiting Machu Picchu. And what came through me was that wouldn't it be wonderful if all of us embraced this, but especially if it was being taught to children. And when I came back, a client said, let's do something. Let's integrate this blueprint into a multimedia platform. But the time wasn't right in 1999. But the time is right now because the technology and many things, resources weren't there. That it's not just us as adults, but imagine if children were integrating this into their life. They would transform their family, the community, the business world, every world would be transformed with a new paradigm. So I'm
Beautiful.
looking forward to meeting all the kindred spirits who resonate with the blueprint and who want to be of service to humanity and
Beautiful.
bringing something visionary forth into the world.
Beautiful. And I'm going to list your website below. Um, your books are really helpful in providing further information about this. But I think part of this call that you're putting out is we all need to collaborate in co-creating this new world together and bring our own unique gifts. And the one thing I want to say in parting, in addition to thanking you, Rita, for being a vehicle for this wisdom to come through you, is that your last step in the ISIS blueprint is that awareness that we are never alone. We are a part of the oneness of all that is. So, as we're in this time of transformation, we are held, we are loved, we are being guided. We're not alone in the journey. So, we all
Brilliant,
remember that.
brilliant, brilliant.
So, thank you, Rita,
Thank you.
and thank you to all of you listening and for being a part of this conscious community, working to co create a new world together. Blessings and love to all of you.